Inside the halls of San Diego State University lies a program dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast that takes you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State. Our goal is to show the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alums on a pathway to journalism success. And now, here's your host, Josh Suchon.
This week on the Where You At podcast, we are staying in San Diego, and this week we are discussing California politics. Our guest is Adriana Heldiz. She attended San Diego State in the mid-2010s. She is currently the assistant visuals editor for CalMatters, which covers all things California politics. She previously worked at the San Diego Union-Tribune and the Voice of San Diego as a multimedia journalist. Adriana, it is a pleasure to meet you. Welcome to the Where You At podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, Adriana came very recommended. There's multiple people who have recommended her at the end of podcasts when we like to brag about other alums. And so I'm excited that I can learn more about Adriana. And we're going to get into your background and kind of growing up in San Diego. But for a lot of people may not know about CalMatters. I just recently learned about it not too long ago. It began, I believe, about 10 or so years ago. Tell us what we need to know about CalMatters as we start to learn about your job.
Yeah, so CalMatters is a nonprofit news organization that covers California state politics and policy. We really focus on what state lawmakers, leaders are doing and how that impacts the various cities and communities across the state. So I am based here in San Diego, which, state politics covers every facet of California life. So we do environment stuff, we do inequality, immigration, housing, homelessness, just a bunch of variety of things that involved California and policy.
So we can find the organization online at CalMatters. And in terms of your title, again, you're the assistant visuals editor. Give us a kind of an overview of how much of this is video, how much of this is pictures, how much of this is graphics, how much of this is writing. Kind of give us an overview of what you do for CalMatters.
So as the assistant visuals editor at CalMatters, I am a part of a small team that basically helps shape the visual storytelling of our editorial content. Mainly that's photojournalism, but we also do video journalism and graphic design and just anything that involves using visuals to better help tell a story.
Do you feel like you always have to have a camera with you no matter where you go, just in case there's breaking news or some type of news thing that's going on that you maybe were not expecting? Do you feel like I'm naked without this camera next to me?
I did feel that way when I used to work at the San Diego Union-Tribune because, it's a daily newspaper. But at CalMatters, we are daily still, but it's not that sort of fast breaking news. And the fact that we cover the entire state of California, I don't have to feel that like anxiety anymore of making sure I always have a camera with me, but out of habit, I will always carry one just in case.
I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, let's start about your background. So you went to high school in Chula Vista at Olympian High, you went to Southwestern and then San Diego State. Give us the background of how journalism bit you. How did you get this journalism bug that has inspired you to want to make this part of your career?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people in our industry now, I stumbled into it. It wasn't something, at least for me, I've never really had a lifelong dream of becoming a journalist. I started off as like a music major because I was really into choir growing up. But as I started going to college, I was more involved in bigger issues. But I knew that I didn't want to go specifically into politics because I didn't want to work politics at all. And it was around that time that I had a friend recommend a show to me called The Newsroom. And I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. And it's about TV news and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, this is it. It's related to world issues. It's doing something good for the community. And now sort of looking back, I don't think it's the best show that portrays the journalism industry, but it was my introduction to it. So from there, I joined the student newspaper at Southwestern College and learned a little bit about video editing, and things just went off from there.
When it comes to, especially when you're a teenager, and I think becomes a certain moment in a lot of different people's lives when they just think, this isn't right. This shouldn't be happening. And for some people, they say, I want to work in politics to change this. And for others, it might be this light bulb of maybe I can help tell this story from a journalistic standpoint in order to make people aware of what's going on. Was there a number of different stories that occurred that was sort of that light bulb that got you really thinking about the world and what is out there and what you can do to tell these stories?
Yeah, I think the time when I started to get involved in journalism, it was during presidential election between Obama and Mitt Romney. And so I was really just enjoying reading all that content and all the things that were happening around it. That was also the time of the civil war in Syria. So I was also trying to learn about what's happening across the world. So I think those two things really were some of the issues that I just wanted to learn more about. And I would just keep reading and trying to understand it better. And slowly I started to realize, this is something that I want. There's a career that involves this love for like politics, but world issues. And so I think that was those two big things that were happening at that time were really what led me down the path of going into journalism.
I consider myself fortunate. My father was a big consumer of news. We got at least two newspapers. This is a long, long time ago. We had two newspapers. He consistently watched the news before going to bed. And so I felt like I learned a lot of journalism just by reading, just by watching and absorbing it. And I'm wondering for you, especially when you first got started at the student newspaper, just like some of those stories that you initially did and being around other students and how that really started to formulate, this is what it means to be a journalist and this is what my place is in journalism.
I mean, I guess up to that point, I was looking at these big national or world events happening. But when I joined the student newspaper at Southwestern College, I began to see the value and importance of local and community news, specifically what things that were happening on campus. Around that time, there was a big issue with like the police department and issues related. There was like a big Ebola scare that happened at the school when Ebola was like a big thing. But then community issues as well with, things happening in Chula Vista and San Diego and how we could sort of use that to relate it to the students at Southwestern College. So I think I didn't grow up with a lot of journalism influence. My parents watched a lot of TV news like Univision, and that was always like a big thing and that we would never miss. They would always watch the local news. But if I'm being completely honest, that wasn't what really got me interested. What got me interested was more finding that space of my own and seeking things that were intriguing to me and then learning more about them and going from there.
All right. How about going to San Diego State? Was it always in the cards that you were going to stay local and go to San Diego State? Or tell us about the process of ending up on Montezuma Mesa.
San Diego State was not the plan. I wanted to go to Chapman University in Orange, which is a private school, and it's supposed to be one of the best schools for TV journalism. It has a really great program. And since that was my plan at that time, I applied for that college and I got in, and I was super excited until I realized that I was going to end up $1,000 in debt. So I started to rethink my options and I got accepted to San Diego State. And I think the last day, the deadline that they gave me of like, to decide where I was going to go was like the last day that I signed up to San Diego State because I was still very much on the fence. So I was not the happiest when I made that choice because I had this idea in my head, but it ended up being like the best thing that I could have done because I think I had a path, an idea that I wanted to do TV journalism. And when I went to San Diego State, it just opened up the doors to like a lot of different ways. And it opened up the doors to visual journalism, which is what I do now and what I ultimately love.
All right, so let's talk more about how those doors opened up. Classes, professors, fellow students. Tell us about some of those things that you did on campus in order to start opening up these doors.
So the first year that I transferred to San Diego State, I was just trying to get used to being in a new campus. I had been at Southwestern College for 4 years, and I grew up in Chula Vista. So it was more like a hometown. I felt very comfortable, I guess. San Diego State was a little bit different. I didn't start there as a freshman, so I didn't feel that connection to the school yet. The first year I was learning, number one, where everything was and how to manage my schedule. So I just sort of laid back a little bit. And it wasn't until my second year that I got really involved with the student newspaper, the Daily Aztec. And because I still wanted to do stuff related to video, in between classes, I would go to the Love Library and watch YouTube tutorials on how to use After Effects and Adobe products like Photoshop and Premiere Pro. And because I was developing those skills, I was able at the Daily Aztec to become the video editor. That's sort of where I got started. And from there, I just sort of kept learning more about video editing and motion graphics. And ultimately, that's what made my experience at San Diego State the best. Is just being involved with other students who are on a similar path that you are and are passionate about the same things that you are as well.
What is it that you enjoy about, whether it's the taking the pictures or the video and the editing, as you said, things like that? Sometimes it can be very tedious when you're editing, when you're trying to get something just right, when you're trying to get the audio levels. What is it that you enjoy about the process of creating stories in a visual way?
When I was first thinking about getting into TV journalism, I specifically wanted to become a TV producer and eventually a news director, simply for the fact that I wanted the control of what was going to go on the news. And when I started to deviate from that, I realized that I could have control in other ways. And I found that through video editing, structuring the story, the packaging of what clip is going to go here and how things are going to move. I like the behind the scenes stuff of building something, not, physically with my hands, but just something that was coming out of my brain and like, oh, this will flow better if I add this graphic here or this B-roll or this audio. That for me was the most exciting part. It was also a challenge because things don't always work out the way that you want them to. So you have to find alternatives. And I like that brainstorming of what could we do to make this better and what can we do to fix if we don't have certain things. So video editing was the introduction to that. And then it elevated to motion graphics, which is, moving like animation and stuff into videos and using graphics to explain things. And then eventually it was photography and other things.
What are some of your other just most cherished memories, whether it's journalism related or not journalism related, about just your time at San Diego State and the people that you met and the things that you got to do as a student?
I love the time that I had at the Daily Aztec. I think a lot of people who were involved will tell you that. I think, like I said, just being around students who are passionate about the same things that you are is great. I often say this, I would stay in the office for hours and hours, even though I didn't have, I was done with my work. I just wanted to be around that environment. And I would do that. I would stay in that office until 1 or 2 a.m., drive back home to Chula Vista and be back on campus by like 8 a.m. for my class. And I don't know how I did it back then, and I can't do that now. But that's part of the whole experience, is having very little sleep, but just enjoying yourself while doing that. And, the journalism program at San Diego State is fairly small. So just, being able to share classes with friends and say, oh, this is how I got through that. And, the professors know you and they all know each other. And like, it's just, San Diego State is a big campus, but the journalism department itself is pretty small. And I think I like how it was it was more of a small community.
I can definitely relate to a lot of the things that you're saying. I worked at the Daily Aztec as well, and I just know that in between classes, I didn't hang out on the quad very often. I did occasionally, but I would just go back into
Yeah.
the office just to be around people and just to hang out. And because I'm so old, we didn't have cell phones back then. Like that's how you figured out where people were. You just went into the Daily Aztec and say, "Hey, where'd everybody go?" And they say, "Oh, well, they're getting lunch over here," or "Oh, they went to the Padres game today," or "They're over here." And so that's how you
Right.
found out where people were. But yeah, that camaraderie is something that's. I mean, these are lifelong friends for me. But also I just feel like I just love the inspiration that we gave each other, that like you said, you're around like-minded people who also are motivated to do something with their life, with their career, and how, I know like I didn't want to let the team down, and there was other people who said the same thing. I don't want to let the newspaper down. And I just think that it's fun. And sometimes you're in a classroom and people are like, "Oh, what did the Daily Aztec think about this? Or what did the Daily Aztec write about this?" It was almost like you were like a tiny bit of famous because you had this a little bit of experience that you're doing.
Yeah, you were like the ambassador of the Daily Aztec in your class. And to your point of also just being around people who are like-minded or have like the similar paths, you learn from them. There was so many times where I would just sit around like the sports writers. I'm not a sports writer, but like just seeing them sort of work through us, I got to learn a little bit more. Or like the page designers or the opinion side, just being around that environment helps you grow as a journalist rather than saying, I'm only going to go and I'm only going to focus on this one thing.
All right, let's discuss getting over to Voice of San Diego and San Diego Union-Tribune as a multimedia journalist. How did you go about doing that? I believe you started as an intern. Who do you contact? Where do you begin to get your foot in the door over there?
So I started working at Voice of San Diego as an intern the spring of 2017. The way that I got that internship was through networking. I got in touch with one of their reporters. His name is Mario Caran. He covered education at that time. And I had read an article that he did related to San Diego Unified. And I just tweeted at him and told him how much I enjoyed that article. And in the next couple of days, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm working on this project related to education and bilingual education specifically. And I wanted to see if you can help me out with this since, you're a journalism student." So that's how we got connected. It wasn't an official internship at that point, but I just wanted to learn more. And within a couple of weeks, it became an official thing. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't, I didn't know exactly what my role was, but I just wanted to help as an intern. I would offer to, if they needed me to cut a clip or something, or if they need to transcribe an interview, a podcast or whatever, I'm down for it. And so that's how it started.
I like to say that flattery will get you a lot of places, and hopefully it's genuine flattery, because there can be so much negative and toxicity on social media that kindness and complimenting people is a very effective means. We need more of that in the world. But also, yeah, when you compliment another journalist, I appreciate this person's work. I want to be like this person. And I think that that's just again, I just think it's good for the world, but it's also just a really smart way to build your network, to build your connections, and sort of inform people, this is the type of journalism that I appreciate, and this is the type of journalism that I ultimately want to do one day too.
Journalism is tough, and you often don't get the thanks or the recognition that you should get. Sometimes I'll see reporters work so hard on a story and they get little feedback, or they don't hear back on anything, or there's little impact on their work. And that's just the reality of things. We don't do it for the praise, but it's good to know that someone is listening attention. And so I try my best to, not just for my coworkers, but for my friends, to read their stuff and let them know that, like, I'm here, I'm supporting you, and I want you to keep going because this is important. And, I pay and because it helps you those connections with people who can in the future help you with whatever else you may need.
How did your internship become a full-time job?
When I was interning at Voice of San Diego, they were going through a little bit of a structural change. And while that was happening, I was about to graduate. And I was a little bit stuck. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have anything else lined up. And so I just went to the editor-in-chief, Scott Lewis, and said, what is the plan? I'm looking to just extend it for like the summer to give me more time to figure things out. And he said, okay, he's like, come back tomorrow and I'll give you my final answer. And so the next day I was sort of already thinking the worst. I was like, okay, it's not going to happen. It's okay. But then he called me to his office and he's like, I'm hiring you full time because we're going to need your help as we sort of go through this change. And I was like, yeah, sure. It's a job. I wasn't really quite sure what I was going to be doing, but I guess my title was assistant digital manager. So I would be doing stuff related to the website. So that's how it got started. It was the perfect timing. They were going through some changes and I was looking to help in whatever way. And so it just happened to be right time, right place.
Well, that's another great lesson in that just ask for the job, right? I mean, I know the feeling myself of being, I don't want to ask, but then it's funny because when somebody else asks you for advice and you say, well, right now you don't have the job. So what's the worst thing that can happen? Nothing, because you don't have the job. So go ahead and ask and let people know this is what I want to do. And, you can, I think that's an example of opening up doors and just creating. And sometimes it might be intimidating, go to the top person or the editor-in-chief, but say, hey, I like working here. I want to work here more. What's the story? I don't want to leave, but what do you got for me? And I love that you did that.
Absolutely. Definitely advocate for yourself.
Do you have a favorite story or two from your time, whether it's with Voice of San Diego or San Diego Union-Tribune, where it's a story that you look back on fondly that just makes you smile about the story for whatever reason?
One of my favorite stories that I worked on while I was at Voice of San Diego was related to school bus cuts in the Sweetwater Union High School District, specifically at San Isidro High School. This was back in 2019, and because of budget problems, the school district was going to cut a bunch of bus routes to that school specifically, which, if you're not familiar with San Diego, San Isidro is a lower income community. And a lot of the students there depended on that transportation. When I started working at Voice, I didn't go into it with the idea that I was going to do photojournalism. That was furthest from my mind. I took on that role because I wanted to keep that job. And I noticed that we didn't have anyone that took photos. And because I did video, I had like a nice DSLR camera. So in the first couple of years, I started to volunteer myself to go and take photos of a press conference or of someone. And by 2019, I started to really get more into it. And at that point is when I was taking a class at UCSD Extension taught by Peggy Petey, who is a San Diego State professor. I didn't take her class while I was at San Diego State, but I took it while I was working at Voice of San Diego to learn more about photojournalism. And the final assignment for that class was to do a photo essay. And given the things that were happening with the San Isidro school bus situation, I offered to do that. And I said, why not just follow a student and see what their journey to school is every day? And I was able to get in touch with a student who would walk 3 miles to and from school every day. And I followed him in the morning. He would wake up at 4 a.m. So I was there and we walked those 3 miles up that hill. San Isidro High School is on a hill. So he walked up those 3 miles and I was there to document it. Afterwards, we walked back. So it was a total of 6 miles. And the story, I guess the headline was 6 miles in a San Isidro High School student's shoes. And it just sort of took you through that journey. And I think what's beautiful about that story is that it took this issue that we often see, budget cuts, and made it relatable to someone. What those budget cuts could do to one student, right? Because of that, he had to walk every day 6 miles. So that's, for me, it's a really fun story because it showed me the value of visual journalism and the impact that it could have.
Personalizing a story, humanizing a story, I think it's such a beautiful way of telling the story. get into your mind a little bit more about this in terms of what are you thinking about visually in terms of when do I want to be to the side? When do I want to be right next to the subject? When do I want to be up so that you can see the student walking up this hill? When do I want to be close enough, but then when do I want to be far enough so that he doesn't know that I'm there, that other people don't know? Kind of where are you angling yourself to get these different shots?
Yeah, a lot of it's making it up as you go and figuring it out and trying different things. A lot of them don't work out, but you have to learn how to anticipate for what's coming next. So the first couple of moments, I was just following him and trying to see how, what path we're gonna go for. I eventually saw that he was gonna crash, so I walked or like I ran ahead, and just so I can, get that shot of him walking across the bridge. If I saw that, he was gonna step over like a bunch of rocks, I would try to like get there beforehand and try to get those detail shots. And yeah, I mean, also building a connection with the source and letting them know that you want to learn more. At first, naturally people are a little bit weird when there's like a camera in your face. But the more time you spend with them and the more you listen to their stories, they start to get really comfortable to you. And I always say this, the best part is when they forget that there's a camera there. They just go about their lives. And that's what happened in this instant afternoon when we were starting to walk back. He was just doing his thing and I was following him and I would click away and he would just continue to do his thing. And we would break the silence by talking about his personal life, or he would tell me things that for me is such a beautiful thing that I love about journalism. But you also have to remember that you're doing a job. So you have to make sure you get the shot as well. So it's just trying different things and really working with the environment that you're in.
When it comes to the final product, if you could, I don't know if you remember how many photos were in the essay versus approximately how many photos you took and what it's like trying to edit and decide which of these photos I'm going to use.
I think generally photo essays are around 12 photos. I am known to take hundreds of photos for one single assignment. And sometimes that's very difficult when you're dealing with space on your computer or space on your hard drive. But yeah, you really just have to think about the ways that you want to tell and shape the story. Similar to when you're writing a story, right? Reporters don't just talk to a source for 2 minutes and get that one quote. They spent at least 30 minutes or at least an hour talking to them. And then they have to go in and decide that. I think it's the same thing with photos. You have to go in and say, okay, how do I shape this story? In that particular instance, it was more chronological, but there are photo stories where you can play around more with like the layout of this day, we're going to add this photo at the top, or we're going to add this detail here. It's also the writing as well. A lot of what I do at CalMatters is help reporters lay out their stories with photos. So I would go in and read the story and I would try my best to work with them and say, okay, I think this shot should go here because it works really well with this quote that you have or this point that you made about this issue. And it's a conversation, right? Because I have that instinct, but I'm not always right. And they know the story better than I do in some parts. So it's a team effort, I guess.
Well, you just mentioned CalMatters, so let's talk more about what you do these days. I always think it's fascinating learning about when do you decide, okay, maybe it's time for me to do something else. Sometimes you're forced to do that. Sometimes people approach you. What was the decision making for you in finding out about the job and ultimately getting the job at CalMatters?
So in 2022, I was working at the San Diego Union-Tribune, and I was really enjoying it. I was part of the photo team. I was really happy there, and I didn't have any plans to leave until a friend sent me a link to a job posting at CalMatters. And prior to working at the Union-Tribune, I was always a big fan of CalMatters. I always enjoyed their content. And I would say to myself, one day I really want to work there. And so when she sent me this job posting and I read it, I was like, oh, this is perfect for me. I have a lot of these skills and I really love the work that they do. And I'm aligned with their mission. So I just said, why not? Let me try it out. If I don't get it, I'm enjoying my time at the Union-Tribune. If I do, great. So I just applied and I went through the process, and thankfully they were really interested in me. And then I had to I had to make the choice, the hard choice, do I leave this place that I really love and enjoy and go do something else? And I eventually decided, you know what, I think I'm ready. And to my surprise, it ended up working out for the better, because my last day was on a Friday, and then the next Monday is when they announced the sale at the Union-Tribune, which has been such big change for the newspaper. So I got out just in time. And that's not to say that the folks that are still working there are stuck or working in this horrible place, but there is a lot of changes that have happened since then. And I still love the Union-Tribune and I love everyone that works there, but I was able to get this, great opportunity and not have to be stressed out about, dealing with like a new owners and like a new company, if that makes sense.
I think it's so cool that a friend sent you the job link. I think it's one of the greatest compliments when a friend sends you a job link and just says, "Hey, I saw this and I thought of you." To me, it just, again, I think it's just one of the greatest compliments when a friend sees something, says, "This isn't for me, but I think it's for you." And that's awesome that your friend did that.
Yeah. I told her I owe you drinks after I got the job. And I did. We got together and celebrated. So I'm really thankful for her.
When it comes to the story ideas for you and your colleagues at CalMatters, sometimes it's obvious. If Gavin Newsom says something, it's a story. And sometimes there's press releases. Sometimes there's not press releases. If there's hidden hazards in toxic trash and how it can be fixed, that's not going to be in a press release. And that's a story that CalMatters did recently. So give us how you and your colleagues come up with just like ideas for what we're going to write about and how we're going to tell the story visually.
The story building process is usually on reporters and their editors. We like to say that we like to focus on stories that are, marry state policy with how it affects people or how it affects a community directly, right? Because we could write all day of new laws and everything that's going on in Sacramento related back to our readers, then how are we going to connect with them and build a sustainable relationship? And I think that's also where visuals comes in to help connect readers to the story, even if they're not directly impacted by it. If they see a photo or if they see a video or graphic that helps them understand the issue, then they can build a connection with it and learn more about it and tell other people and just become more aware and hopefully become more civically engaged and decide to, you know what, I'm going to advocate for this thing or I'm going to speak out against this injustice. That's ultimately the goal, is to get people more engaged on what's happening. So our role is usually to help reporters achieve that, right, through visuals. So we usually come in, they have an idea and they're like, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this story. Can we brainstorm what sort of visual things that we can do for it? Is that photos? Is that video? Is that a graphic? So that's usually how it works. My coworker, Larry Valenzuela, did a photo essay on street medicine when it comes to the population and give them the medical care that they need. And that was something that he worked on his own and, reported the story and took all the photos. So it's a little combination of us helping out the reporters in our team, but us following our own stories as well.
So
California, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And California is this huge place. So you're in San Diego. Tell us a little bit more about the different, I don't know if it's beats, if it's city, if it's regions, in terms of trying to make sure that, obviously there's editors who want to make sure that the entire state is covered, but in terms of, what different assignments you end up getting based on your location in San Diego.
Yeah, so I'm really thankful that they wanted me to stay local to San Diego because I love San Diego. I'm from here. It's home. A lot of times, a reporter would say, I'm working on an issue, let's say about cannabis. And I've, through research, learned that San Diego is doing something related to that. And I'm going to come down there And I usually am the one that will go with them and, report the story and take photos. If I can't do it, we'll find someone else who can do it. We work with a lot of great freelancers across the state of California. So that's usually how it works. I guess the best example is recently one of my colleagues who covers housing, and he had sort of through his research learned that San Diego was leading the forefront when it comes to ADUs. So he came down to San Diego and we saw a lot of people. I was able to help him, with the photos, and it ended up being a great story. So that's usually how it works, is reporters will work on the topic or an issue. And if it's related to my part of the region, then I will try my best to help them out however they need me to.
Okay, we're going to start to wrap things up here with Adriana, but I would like to get a few more topics before we conclude. And I always want to get advice for students, whether it's someone who is currently a student in college, whether it's someone who's a high school student. I know that Temple Northrop directs a lot of potential journalism students to this podcast. Give us some of your just big picture advice for students who want to become a journalist, especially if they would become a photojournalist like yourself.
My advice for students who are interested in photojournalism or journalism in general is to go for it and try it out. Learn more, read more journalism, read more writing, not just, don't read, the New York Times is great, but read local journalism and learn about what's happening in your community, and how that impacts you directly or impacts a certain group of people. The other thing is that I would, if there's something that you're specifically interested in, let's say photojournalism, I would say definitely go for it and start to experiment with it and try it out. But also don't be afraid to try other things. You never know if you're going to like writing better. You never know if you're going to like designing a page better or sports, right? I would say try the various aspects of journalism so that number one, you get, you try a variety of things, but two, you understand how those different aspects work as well. And that makes you a better journalist in general. So that would be my advice, and get involved. I think if there's something Josh and I have been talking about is being around people who are passionate about the same things that you are really motivates you. When I was at Southwestern College, I started off as a music major and I didn't click with any other music majors on campus, and I struggled a bit. And when I finally switched to journalism and I joined the student newspaper, I got more focused on, getting all of my classes done and transferring. And I was able to transfer super fast after that, to the point where I was bummed that I was leaving Southwestern College because I had built such strong relationships there. So definitely get involved in the community and find people who are passionate about the same thing that you are.
The other thing that I'll add to Adriana's advice is that when you learn different types of journalism platforms, it opens you up to get more potential jobs. Because if you can only do one or two things, then there's only so many jobs that you have a chance of getting. But the more different skills that you learn, the more that it opens up opportunities. So yes.
I feel like that's the reality of the journalism industry today. Mm-hmm. You're expected to do a little bit of everything. And if you're more familiar with all those different aspects, you become a better suited candidate for jobs in the future.
All right, let's brag about other San Diego State alums who are making us proud. After all, once again, that's how we learned about Adriana last semester. So the floor is yours to begin, Adriana. Brag about whoever you want to brag about.
Well, first, I want to give a big shout out to Alex Piscatelli and Jack Moman, who I know were guests on this podcast. They're two of my best friends, and they're also journalism majors. They were Daily Aztec people as well. So if you haven't checked out their interview or follow them on social media, I would definitely recommend that you do that. The other person I want to highlight is Andrew Dyer. He is currently the military reporter at KPBS. He used to work at the San Diego Union-Tribune, but he was also at the Daily Aztec and is a transfer student from Southwestern College as well. Andrew's super passionate about journalism, and he would be one of those people that we would be in the office later at night just discussing and going through, how do we shape this story and how do we make things better? How do we make our coverage better? Those passionate discussions that you get as students. So I'm still very good friends with him, and he's someone that I admire. The other person I would shout out is Andrea Lopez Villafaña. She and I went to college together at San Diego State. We were at the Daily Aztec. She is now the managing editor at Voice of San Diego. She is such a great person. Latina, DACA. She is so passionate about community journalism and making sure that underrepresented communities are represented in the coverage. And she is now leading a newsroom. And she's doing such amazing, great things. And she's also a really good friend of mine. The other person is Jocelyn Moran, who, if you start to notice a pattern, is also a Daily Aztec alumni. She is now working in the Bay Area. I believe now she works for the NBC affiliate in San Francisco. And she's just such a great person to work alongside with. I think she does some of the morning coverage, or she's part of the morning show, but she covers a lot of the issues in the Bay, but is also just such a fun person to be around with, and is always advocating for you. The other person is Kayla Jimenez, which, surprise, surprise, is a Daily Aztec alumni as well. She and I worked together at Voice of San Diego. She did some really important reporting on sexual misconduct as it relates to teachers in San Diego schools. She now works for USA Today, does a little bit of breaking news and education as well. And she's such a sweetheart and is passionate about community journalism as well. I think that's it for now. I know I'm missing a lot of people, but we could be here all day.
Oh, that makes me so happy, though, that there's so many people that you're proud of and that you mentioned. For myself this week, I wanted to stick with the theme of, yes, another Daily Aztec alum who's involved in visual journalism. I want to focus on a guy by the name of Patrick Green. Patrick and I worked at the Daily Aztec together in the 90s. He is a filmmaker and journalist who is based in Los Angeles. He does a lot of documentary film work. In fact, I just got a chance to talk to Patrick a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not allowed to talk about the project that he's currently working on, which is super exciting, but I am allowed to talk about the project that will hopefully come out this year. And it is a documentary about all of the graffiti artists from Los Angeles who created murals of Kobe Bryant and his daughter after they tragically passed away. It was never something that was organized. There was never like any sort of memo that went out. You just had a lot of people who were artists who were feeling a lot of pain, and they just decided to make a mural of Kobe Bryant. And the more that Patrick drove around Los Angeles, he realized the quantity that were all around the city and all the different parts of the city. And so he decided to make a film about it. And I can't wait to see it. I've seen the trailer. If people want to see the trailer and learn more about him, again, his name is Patrick Green. You can go to buypatrickgreen.com and you can watch the trailer about that documentary and a lot of the others that he's done. He's someone who just really has a keen eye for looking around him and seeing what type of story can I do with this. And so he's just super fun and really proud of it.
Hey, yeah, I'll have to check that out. Super interesting.
All right, Adriana, this was super interesting talking to you. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. And I hope our paths cross at some point in person. But again, so much great advice. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And if there's anything that you would take away from, if you're listening to this podcast, anything that you should take away is that there's a strong San Diego State journalism community. We all stay in touch and we all like to help each other. So if anyone out there ever needs any help, any advice, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and that San Diego journalism community extends even people who are no longer in San Diego. It's still a bond. It's still a connection, even whether you're physically there or not. All right, Adriana, thank you again for your time. My name is Josh Suchon. I'm the host of the Where You At podcast. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you're at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms in person or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.